I think looking at the winter time that we should really be aware of is actually fleece material. So something that's made of like your typical scarf or some of the snoods actually makes transmission of the virus much worse. And there was a study that looked at 14 different types of masks. And obviously the filtered masks reduced the number of particles transmitted by the most. But what was interesting was fleece material actually increased the amount of particles more than having no mask. And the rationale there was that the material almost acts like a filter. So you have big particles that then become smaller particles. So it's really important that if you're covering your face, you're not using something made of fleece material. It might be tempting to get like a snood or a scarf and be warm, but actually that's probably doing a disservice. I would stick with the mask that you know is comfortable and the mask that you know that works. And there are some, as I said, some masks with higher filters. But I think the honest thing is, if it's made of a decent material and you're used to it, and you can wear it consistently, then stick with that, and then cover up to keep warm with other scarves and things. Lots of the masks, especially the disposable ones, aren't going to last very long, especially if they get wet. And obviously, if that gets wet, then that impairs some of that filtration function. Which is kind of why I suggested wearing a mask and maybe wearing something to cover it if you keep warm or rain is important. And just make sure that your mask is fully dry, because obviously the other thing we need to worry about is if everybody's reusing their masks and they're getting damp and they're not washing them in between, which you absolutely should be, then there's other risks of that becoming a culture medium for bacteria and fungi, and then you shouldn't be breathing in those either. So you just need to be really careful with that. You can transmit the virus in two ways, right? So you can have aerosols and droplets, or those droplets can land on a surface, you can touch that and touch your face. So washing hands remains, as it always has been, essential. I would suggest that if you're going to wash your hands when the humidity is low and they're prone to getting very dried out and cracked, that you think about either wearing hand sanitizer, but also moisturizer as well. But there is a little bit of evidence that suggests that in the colder weather, the virus can last a little bit longer, and actually in higher humidity. So if the humidity drops in the winter, then that might be good. So I don't really know. But the predominant change really is in people's behavior, and that's the biggest risk factor, and that's what people have to be, I think, most aware of. Obviously, the other thing to be really aware of is the risk is much greater in the winter because predominantly of people's behavior, really. So one thing that we really know or are starting to know a lot about is there's a real risk of what we call aerosol transmission. And that means little drops of particles in the air. Now, that risk is negligible, nearly nothing at all if you're outside where it's incredibly well ventilated. And during the summer, there was lots of socializing in outdoor events and people were sitting outside. But the cold winter already has driven people much more indoors. So if you can, have a window open or have some ventilation going if you're in an inside space. And again, if there's options to work from home or to avoid, crowded inside spaces where you're going to be for a prolonged period of time, we should absolutely be investing in them. If you remember back to the beginning of, February and March when it was pretty cold, we had quite a few quite super spreader events and big wide open plan offices, and the theory being there that again was aerosol spread right at the beginning. So if you are in a situation, an indoor situation, even for a short amount of time, especially using public transport or commuting, a mask is absolutely essential.